you win the lottery in the United States after confirming with whichever lottery authority issued the winning ticket that it's genuine, there's pretty much only a single thing that you need to do before the money will be paid out. Choose whether you'd like the jackpot paid out as a single lump sum or an annual payment spread over the course of several years. While the standard for Powerball and Mega Millions, the two largest and best-known lotteries in the US, is for these annual payments to occur over the course of 29 years, some smaller state lotteries offer more flexible payment options. It's also worth noting that the decision to claim a lottery win anonymously isn't one available to all winners because many states require that the details of winners will be published, which will be huge in what we're going to discuss in a minute on the reality of winning the lottery. But for now, once this decision is made on how they want the money given to them, the winner will then receive either the lump sum or their first annual payment, and their contact with whichever lottery authority they were talking to will just cease. On the surface, this may not seem all that bad until you consider the host of problems that can arise from suddenly potentially becoming a multi-millionaire overnight. For starters, a major lottery win would immediately put you in the top percentile of earners in the United States. And since lottery wins are considered taxable income in the US, making lotteries even more of a steal for governments, as we'll get into shortly when discussing the exact figures, you'd be liable to pay not an insignificant percentage of your winnings to the man come tax time. Nobody at the lottery office is obligated to tell you this, and while it might seem obvious to some, countless lottery winners have found themselves being bankrupted by improperly estimating tax bills and spending too much of their winnings. Even stuff as simple as getting the money paid into your account can be difficult, since many banks have limits on how much money you can pay in at a single time. Now, you might be thinking, well, couldn't I just open a new account that has no such limitations? And the answer is yes, but what kind of accounts would be best? And countless other trivialities like that the more affluent may be well versed in are simply not on most big ticket lottery winners' radars, which perhaps is a theme that you're picking up on here, and we'll dive into the specifics of why shortly, along with all the murder. Now, an obvious solution to these problems, and any others that could arise as a result of winning the lottery, is simply to hire a bunch of financial and legal advisors and pay them to just figure out all of this stuff for you. In fact, the number one piece of advice given in nearly every single big ticket lottery winner case is to consult a financial advisor, with most sources saying that you should realistically try to do this before claiming the money so that all of your ducks are in a row from day one. Even the official website for the Missouri Lottery tells winners to get professional tax and/or legal advice to help you decide the best way for you to claim your prize. Which begs the question, if the advice to seek professional advice is so ubiquitous, why don't they just have an expert on the subject work for the lottery office? You know, like they do in the UK. Specifically, Camelot, the company that operates the National Lottery in the UK, have what they call a team of winners advisors. These impartial advisors are basically tasked with, in the words of Camelot's senior winners advisor Andy Carter, looking after anyone in the UK who wins £50,000 or more on the lottery. So, what does this entail exactly? Well, the first thing Andy's team does is contact the winner and set a date for them to meet, either at the winner's home or at a Camelot regional office, to pay out their winnings. Deciding when this meeting takes place is entirely in the hands of the winner, though they're strongly advised to make it a weekday, mostly because that's when most banks in the UK are open. Winners are free to ignore this advice, of course, but choosing for the meeting to take place on a weekday means that the winner can request for a portion of their winnings to be brought to the meeting in cash so that they can celebrate before the money clears in their account. And speaking of banks, given the nature of their work, the Winners Advisors team have contacts working for every major bank in the UK and can arrange for a representative from any one of them to be present at the meeting with the winner. This representative can then, if the winner so desires it, set up a private bank account during the meeting. The main benefit of this is that such a bank account is effectively hidden, allowing a winner to maintain a high degree of anonymity. To quote Andy himself, "We have contacts with all the major banks. Some of them have departments that deal with lottery winners. We get one of those representatives to come out while we're with the winner, and they'll open up a separate account that's shielded from the branch network. So, if you were to walk into a branch of your particular bank, they would never know that you have this money. It's about ensuring the funds go over there discreetly and swiftly, and make sure the winners have access to advice." Andy's team can also have legal and financial advisors sit in on the meeting, none of whom will be privy to the winner's contact information unless the winner allows it. This is done to allow the winner an opportunity to pick the brains of a seasoned expert on, say, tax or inheritance law in an impartial setting. On this note, unlike in the US, winners in the UK can absolutely claim their winnings anonymously, and as noted, the winner's advisors team can make special accommodations to allow the money to be put in a secret account, so even the winner's local bank manager won't know about it. Now, although it's noted that the vast majority of winners do claim their winnings anonymously. Camelot won't provide exact figures, but someone working for the winner's advisors team has been quoted as saying only 10 to 15% of winners ever go public. The winner's advisor team can provide advice on how to adjust to life in the public eye as a multimillionaire if the winner wants them to. The winner's advisors team will generally go through the potential pros and cons of either announcing a lottery win or remaining anonymous with winners, basing the advice they'll give on a brief interview they'll conduct with the winner when they first speak on the phone. This interview, along with putting the winner at ease and walking them through what exactly is going to happen over the coming days, will attempt to establish who, if anyone, the winner has informed of their win, what they plan to do with the money, and their current financial situation. This brief snapshot of a winner's life will allow the team to tailor the advice they give and help them decide what kind of advisors to bring along to the initial meeting. This being the UK, unless the winner wants to claim their prize publicly, in which case a photo op can be arranged with a large novelty check, which, by the way, you can actually cash in most cases, although normally a normal-sized check is also issued for convenience. In this public presentation, members of the press are also generally present, though because British people are going to British people, the actual act of being paid is fairly muted. According to official Camelot protocol, upon confirmation of the winning ticket being valid, a representative will say to the winner very simply, "Congratulations, you are a winner, and I can pay you on your prize." At which point the winnings will be paid into whichever account the winner specified. As an aside, in the UK, lottery winnings aren't considered to be income, so this payment will be 100% tax-free. Though the winner will invariably be liable to pay other taxes and fees, all of which they'll be informed about prior to receiving their winnings. After the metaphorical dust settles, people who've won particularly large jackpots will be given access to financial advisors and legal experts whose services are made available to the winner free of charge should they need them. The idea being that a winner can receive impartial advice should they feel like they need it. Exactly when the winner's advisors team breaks contact with a winner depends on when the winner themselves feel like they no longer need help or advice, with some breaking contact almost immediately, and others staying in contact with the team for many months. Curiously, despite the aforementioned fact that multiple American lottery winners have very publicly gone bankrupt, or in a surprising number of cases even been murdered, there seems to be no real push to adopt a similar system to the UK, where such stories are massively less common. So, let's now dive into the more personal side of winning the lottery in the land of the descendants of the terrorists who rebelled against the king and country a few hundred years ago, and see why winning tons of money via the lottery often results in people's lives being significantly worse than before. Enter a study done by Mark Hoekstra from the University of Pittsburgh covering 1,900 Florida lottery winners who won $50,000 to $150,000. According to this study, this group was significantly more likely to go bankrupt within 5 years than small-time lotto winners under $10,000, and about twice as likely to go bankrupt over the normal population. Just as significant, before winning these $50,000 to $150,000, lotto winners were no more or less likely to go bankrupt than the general populace. The act of winning itself doubled their chances of going bankrupt. What's even more surprising is that in the vast majority of these cases, the $50,000 to $150,000 was significantly more than the total debts held by the winners at the date of winning, yet instead of just paying off their debts, most simply blew the money and then often acquired debt at a faster rate once the money ran out. So, what's going on here? Well, it's complicated, but let's start with why the lottery also has the nickname a tax on the poor. You see, a whopping $60 billion a year in the United States alone is spent on lottery tickets, most of which are purchased by low-income individuals. All total, about 20% of Americans play the lotto. Despite the high number of lotto tickets purchased annually, when playing the lottery in all its forms, you'll win an average of just 53 cents for every dollar that you spend, making it one of the lowest return rates of any form of commercial gambling, and thus extremely profitable for the various government bodies who run the lotteries, especially when considering that winnings themselves are also taxable. According to a study by Emil Hazley et al., the lottery operators can get away with this low return rate by pricing the tickets so cheap compared to the potential payoff that people just keep coming back for more. Low-income people, among other reasons according to the study's findings, were significantly more likely to play as they perceive their own wealth to be lower than average. Thus, they attempt a low-cost way, individual ticket-wise, to rectify the issue, even though they know the chances of it working out are incredibly low. It's at least something they can try to do to rectify the situation without costing too much on the surface in money or effort, a sort of Hail Mary pass for their lives just to see. Now, if these individuals were to add up the total amount they spend per year on lottery tickets and had to pay it in one lump sum on all the tickets at once, they'd not be nearly as willing to play and likely could have really used that money for other things. You see, the most startling number in all of this is that those who make $13,000 per year or less in the United States, on average, spend about 5% of their gross annual earnings on lottery tickets, which also, at least in part, starts to explain that whole bankruptcy issue. So going back to the discussion of bankruptcy, according to wealth counsellor Zifra Burke, an estimated 1/3 of all big lotto winners and others who suddenly come into wealth will file for bankruptcy within 5 years of receiving this cash influx. Burke says, for many people who come into wealth suddenly, whether they win the lottery, receive an insurance settlement, or an unexpected inheritance, if they have not acquired good money skills prior to this windfall, often they struggle and make poor choices. If someone is in trouble financially, if they're spending more than they're making or relying emotionally on the lottery to bail them out, then that's a big problem. Surprisingly, those who get the money and then choose to start their dream business rather than just blow the money, these people are generally no better off than those who just spent the money on hookers and blow. She states they have no idea how to run a business and just throw money at any problem that comes up rather than develop a business that can potentially be profitable someday. For example, Ken Proxmar, who was a machinist when he won $1 million, rather than blow it on nothing like so many others, he did the sensible thing and started a business, a car dealership. Within 5 years, he had to file for bankruptcy and was back working as a machinist. Even for those who keep their head down, so to speak, and use the money wisely, there's still some negatives that come with it. For example, 53-year-old Steve Granger in 2009 won $900,000, receiving approximately $600,000 after taxes. Despite the modest but still potentially life-altering winnings, which he and his wife simply put away for retirement, he and his wife began to be met with resentment from those that they knew and started hearing things like, "There goes the lottery, people," said in spite. There was also a phase that lasted a while, where random strangers kept grabbing him and his wife for luck. This sort of thing wasn't limited to the Grangers. The son of Billy Bob Harrell, you'll hear more about his incredibly sad story in a bit, he stated, "First of all, we had to change our phone number about 7 times. It was supposed to be unlisted, but then someone would call. People seemed to have no trouble getting the number. We also got a mountain of mail. Worse, they were bombarded with business opportunities from random entities, along with letters from individuals sending sob stories, maybe made up, maybe not, and asking for a share of the winnings. For instance, things like, people would tell you that their daughter was dying and couldn't we just send a check to help her live? They'd tell you their life story, and you'd like to believe them, but you just can't." They also had numerous people driving by and knocking at their door for a similar purpose. One woman at Walmart grabbed Harold's wife Barbara after spending $500 on lottery tickets. She threateningly told Barbara that if she lost the tickets, with their luck not working out on her in that case, they'd better refund her money. This is all not to mention the occasional problem suffered by some lottery winners where people come out of the woodworks to try and find an excuse to sue them, which is also a potential problem you'll face being a very public big ticket lotto winner. And then, of course, besides such drawbacks, there are the train wreck situations where winning the lottery, rather than making your life better, makes it demonstrably worse in just about every way, and occasionally even ends the life. Briefly, before we get into some of the other pitfalls you probably haven't thought of with respect to suddenly becoming very wealthy, here are just a few of the many such train wreck stories that we came across in our research on this one, which illustrates a lot of issues for many. Enter the aforementioned Billy Bob Harrell, who is perhaps a poster child for how things can go wrong even for someone who wins a ton with the lottery but doesn't even necessarily overspend for themselves. Harrell won $31 million in 1997. That's $58 million today, taking the 25 annual installments rather than the lump sum. At the time, he was working for the Home Depot after being laid off of a couple of other jobs in the previous few years. He quickly bought himself a ranch, but also, critically, 6 other homes for his family and several new cars. After the initial splurge, he spent very little on himself and simply had his checkbook out and ready for anyone who contacted him saying they needed money. This became problematic because he started getting more requests than he could afford. The sob stories people were telling him, he was believing, unlike the rest of his family, and it supposedly tore him up inside. According to his son, he just couldn't say no when he'd been so fortunate. He even lost £50 to 20 to 170, apparently from the stress of it all. As stresses and frictions mounted, his wife Barbara Jean soon divorced him. As funds became even tighter, he became involved in a Texas company that promised him $2.25 million right off the bat if he'd sign over 10 years of his winnings, about $12 million. Despite everyone, including his financial advisor, which he did have, advising him against it, he was determined to go through with it. When asked why, beyond desperately needing the money right then, he stated that he was in so deep he figured that if he backed out, they'd just sue him for the money anyways, which again, well, lawsuits can be a major issue for a very public big-ticket lotto winner. Thus, he signed the deal. 20 months after winning the lottery, he attempted to reconcile with his wife, but she refused. It was then that his son found his father in his mother's house naked and having shot himself in the chest with a shotgun. There was a note: "I didn't want this. I just wanted you." There was no sign of the $2.5 million he'd traded the $12 million worth of installments for, and no money at all available to pay the estate taxes. His once fairly happy family was broken, and the grandparents reportedly were even feuding with his kids. They were convinced that it wasn't suicide, but murder, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Before his death, he told his financial advisor, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me." This is something that one William Budd Post III concurred with. Budd won $16.2 million in 1988, about $41 million today. After winning, his ex-girlfriend sued him, claiming that she deserved a share of the winnings. She won. His own brother and his wife hired someone to kill him, no doubt hoping to be able to inherit some of the winnings. William quickly blew through the money buying houses, investing in various business ventures proposed to him, most people likely scamming him, cars and other such things for himself and his family and friends who incessantly bugged him for money. Within a year of winning the $16.2 million, he was $1 million in debt, then he filed for bankruptcy and started living on food stamps and a $450 Social Security stipend. He died in 2006 at the age of 66. He said of winning the lotto, "I wish it never happened. It was totally a nightmare." And this brings us to Abraham Shakespeare. Shakespeare, who was near illiterate and had dropped out of school in the 7th grade, won $31 million in 2006, about $46 million today. Like so many others, he didn't spend much on himself, at least relatively speaking. Mostly he just bought himself a $1 million home, a Nissan Altima, and a Rolex watch. Beyond that, he seems to have been fairly conservative when it came to himself. But as is a major theme, he ended up spending much of his money on family and friends. Eventually, unlike many, he wised up, stating, "I'd have been better off broke. I thought all these people were my friends, but then I realized all they want is just money." 3 years later, he suddenly disappeared. 1 year after the disappearance, his body was found. He'd been murdered by one of the people who pretended to be his friend. The murderer, ultimately found to be one Doris Donegan Moore, or had used a variety of means to get Shakespeare to give him millions. She even started a business with him, which she was going to run. After it was founded and the bank account was full, she withdrew $1 million and went on vacation. In the interim between his disappearance and his body being discovered, his family at first thought he'd just become fed up with the constant stream of people begging for money and just left to start a new life. In the end, they began to grow suspicious of Moore's apparent attempt to make everyone think that Shakespeare was still around, such as texting people from his phone, which is a major red flag because, as we said, he was near illiterate, and paying people to say that they'd seen him, including offering $200,000 to Shakespeare's son to tell detectives that he'd seen his father recently. She even attempted to pay someone $50,000 to say they murdered him. She was finally arrested and the body found after attempting to pay someone to move the corpse. Investigators later revealed, completely unrelated to any of this, Moore had previously attempted to say that her car was stolen and that she'd been kidnapped and raped in the process. She even taped her own wrists, threw herself from someone's car, and took a rape exam. So why did she do any of this? Because she was behind on payments for a car and it was going to be repossessed. This was her way of trying to keep it by claiming that it was stolen. So, now let's talk about a little twist on this. Someone who handled everything very, very well. One Jeffrey Dampier. Dampier won $20 million in 1996, about $28 million today. Although Dampier did do the common thing of spreading his wealth about, buying various things for family and friends like houses, cars, and the like, he also founded a gourmet popcorn store, Cassie's Gourmet Popcorn, which surprisingly was quite profitable, and on top of that allowed him to give jobs to certain family and friends. 9 years after winning, he was doing quite well overall. So, what went wrong? Enter one Victoria Jackson, who called him out to her apartment. When he arrived, her man, Nathaniel Jackson, pulled a gun on him. They tied him up, drove him out of town, and then Victoria shot the 39-year-old Dampier in the head. Nathaniel Jackson stated that it wasn't about getting the money. You kill the goose, there are no more golden eggs. It was more about resentment over Dampier's fortune and success. The list goes on and on and on, with the prevailing themes from so many where it all goes wrong generally centering around, first, the vast majority of winners simply do not come from a background where knowing how to manage a large sum of money optimally or properly factor in taxes and all manner of things like this is something they know how to do. Second, especially in the US, where lottery winners cannot remain anonymous, or at least not easily. In some cases, some do use an intermediary to claim the prize for them, but this is fraught with potential issues. People come out of the woodwork to try and get money from them, from family and friends to random individuals offering business deals or to help them manage their money who really just want to take it, or even potentially sob stories on how life-changing some of that money could be to them, something the lotto winners can easily empathize with. Lawsuits can also follow, whether frivolous or not, still a nightmare. Spending most of the money on friends and family and getting scammed out of the rest is sadly also a huge issue. What about for those who manage everything well and avoid the other common pitfalls? Now able to live the dream, right? Well, not always either. You see, it's likely if you suddenly jumped in economic class to a significant degree, you're also at a much higher risk of experiencing another issue of a more social nature, which on the surface may seem trivial, but is actually pretty fundamental to humans humaning and being able to be happy. Enter the results of a 4-year study fittingly titled The Joys and Dilemmas of Wealth. As the name of the paper suggests, wealth comes with a number of positives and negatives that may not be apparent to someone whose bank account primarily contains the wrong kind of zeros. One of the main drawbacks revealed in this study was the propensity for the wealthy to feel immensely isolated from their fellow man. Or to quote a client of a wealth psychologist called Robert A. Kenny on the matter, wealth can be a barrier to connecting with other people. While a knee-jerk reaction from that might be to whip out a tiny violin and start playing, consider that meaningful connections to all your fellow humans are one of the most fundamental urges to being a human. As to why wealth imparts such isolation, even sometimes when surrounded by people, there are several facets to this. For example, one issue here, which can even ruin relationships that might have otherwise been fine, is the constant wondering if those around you only want to be your friend or partner because they want something from you. Naturally, given there are many individuals in this world perfectly happy to leech off others with a smile on their face and otherwise capable of seeming genuine about it, there are almost always these people around the wealthy, sometimes mixed in with those who actually care and sometimes not. Telling the difference, not always so easy. On top of this, as noted by one well-off unnamed woman responding to how wealth interferes with her relationships, she states that she has particular difficulty when revealing her financial situation to men who generally feel emasculated by her. She sums up, their role as provider has been usurped. Similar sentiments have been expressed by wealthy men who opine they find it difficult to know for sure if women are interested in them or interested in their money. Moving on from there, as we've previously alluded to, there is always the potential of those you otherwise really care for and maybe even formerly cared for becoming jealous of your financial state or in times of their own financial strain getting upset at you for not offering to solve their problem with your excess. And even if you happily do so without any strings or even needing to be asked, there's another problem of potential resentment or the like that can and does very commonly arise from that. For example, some individuals, after feeling a bit like a charity case and lesser in general for needing your help in the first place. This all further creates tension between the two of you, which can strain even the best of genuine friendships. Beyond these potential pitfalls to social connection, making such associations with those of more humble standing can even be dangerous, as noted. It turns out, as will come as a shock to absolutely no one, while most people are generally decent enough, a small percentage are not. And this can cause major issues when you're wealthy, particularly if wealthy in a high-profile way like a big-ticket lottery winner in the US. But even if you somehow manage to achieve what is sometimes called stealth wealth, this doesn't always solve the issue of social isolation, at least as hiding various major facets of your life isn't exactly a recipe for developing a deep and intimate relationship with someone. But more than that, regardless of whether your friends know or not, there is the potential disconnect in your ability to relate to the day-to-day lives of those of lesser financial standing to you. And since, in some cases, most are now of much less financial standing than you, finding those that you can really connect with can be difficult. But look, if you still need a bit more practice on that tiny violin, moving on to the next issue, we have the case where those who didn't work for their money, like lottery winners, and now no longer need to work, as is the case with some of the biggest sum lottery winners. While you might think they're living the dream, it turns out this is probably the worst issue of all: extreme boredom and inability to find fulfillment in one's day-to-day life. And look, while you may no longer be able to hear us over the sound of the tiniest of violins, without the structure and sense of purpose things like work bring, many rich individuals find themselves struggling with depression, aimlessness, and end up feeling even more isolated from the world. Of course, despite everything we've just said, most of us would still happily trade our current set of problems for those of the huge sum big-ticket lotto winners. But it turns out, rich or poor, human nature is human nature. While money can solve most problems, there are some things extremely fundamental to humaning and apparently micing that an abundance of resources can paradoxically rob you of, even if you make sound financial decisions after winning that huge sum. Or to paraphrase famous scholar Christopher Wallace, more money means more problems.